Today we're talking about Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire. Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla and Kong XXX. Whoa! Before I give my thoughts on the movie, I want all of you to go down below in the comments and let me know, are you team Godzilla or are you team Kong? I've been a Kong guy since day one and I stand firm in that. While it's undeniable that Godzilla has more power, Kong has more weaponry, more personality, more of a sense of humor, and overall a humanity to his character that I really appreciate. With that said, tell me why I'm wrong down below in the comments, and let's get into this review. The MonsterVerse franchise as a whole has really been one of the most tonally inconsistent out there, with the first few installments while displaying the massive scale of these monsters. Each movie was also clearly trying to establish a sense of seriousness with heavy stakes and dramatic character moments. But with Godzilla vs. Kong and now Godzilla X Kong, they've taken the complete opposite direction, fully embracing the cheese and the ridiculousness, and in these last two movies, especially in Godzilla X Kong, the human characters have now taken a massive step back, giving more room for the monsters to shine, being demoted to a few quips here and there and a lot of exposition. And as somebody whose biggest criticisms with these movies has been the human element, I'm okay with that. These movies thrive in sheer chaos and spectacle of seeing gargantuan kaiju creatures facing off, going head to head in battle, and Godzilla X Kong highlights that more than ever before. This movie feels like a Saturday morning cartoon, or when we were kids and we would put our action figures through the ringer to make our most imaginative fantasies come to life. None of it makes sense. None of the attempts of plot and exposition ever come together, but ultimately, when Godzilla and Kong team up, none of the other stuff matters. If you're going into this movie looking for layered character development or extensive world building or a cohesive plot, this movie's not for you. But if you're looking for a turn your brain off visual experience with massive destruction, weaponry, and gravity-defying fight sequences, this will definitely be your thing. I've heard this movie described as the WrestleMania of kaiju monster battles, and to me, that is a very accurate description of what this is. The team-ups, the face-offs, the other monsters rising from the ashes to save the day. It's very much structured like a wrestling match on a much more massive scale. In fact, going back to the human characters, it's very hard for these movies to exist without some sense of human presence to give us the exposition and explain what's happening on the screen. But I wouldn't mind if, as this franchise continues to grow and the fights get bigger, that the human characters may be demoted to more of a fight commentator role.
The most stupendous event in entertainment, WrestleMania.
Here we go, folks. Godzilla is charging. He is glowing. He's about to prove why he is the king of the monsters. But oh! Kong comes in with the massive right hook, and Godzilla sits right back down. I hope there's insurance on that pyramid because it just crumbled. What a battle. Nothing is safe, ladies and gentlemen. I'm serious. I would not have an issue with that if that's the direction they decide to take. That's not to say all of the human characters were unbearable this time around. Dan Stevens in particular added the perfect amount of camp. He plays a very unserious, happy-go-lucky guy who is a walking 80s jukebox. He's filled to the brim with charisma, and without a doubt, he delivers my favorite lines of the bunch. It's clear he knew exactly what type of movie he signed up for, and his performance complements that extremely well. But with everything I like about the human elements, there's still plenty that didn't work for me. There are moments where they try way too hard to establish this mother-daughter relationship with Rebecca Hall and Kaylee Hottle, and it all feels very forced considering she's only had custody of this girl since the previous MonsterVerse movie, and they've really done nothing to establish their relationship whatsoever to make it believable, to make you buy into these emotional elements that they are forcing down your throat here. There's also an entire subplot in this movie surrounding Hottle's character and her lineage, and while I can see what they were going for, it really does nothing at all for the movie. Brian Tyree Henry also returns here, and while his character has a few good moments, there's a consistent plotline with his character to where he's wanting to capture footage of Hollow Earth to put it on his podcast for everyone to see because nobody believed him when he described the events of what happened in the previous MonsterVerse movie. And I swear the guy is using a camcorder from like 2008. I mean, come on, Brian. Your phone has better footage than that thing. I appreciate that they were trying to be more campy, but it's also obvious that they were trying to be more campy, which resulted in it being even more cheesy, but not always in a good way. I do like the fact that they take more time here to explore Hollow Earth. We get introduced to new realms as well as all of the different living species inside of Hollow Earth, and it definitely just feels a little more fully realized than it did in the previous movie. Obviously, we didn't get a lot of time spent there in Godzilla vs. Kong, but towards the end of the movie, Kong was sort of dumped into that world and left there all on his own. We see early on a bit of Kong's loneliness, but as the movie goes along, he meets new characters and he interacts with the world more. And especially when you get towards the end, they incorporate a lot of elements from Hollow Earth into the final battle that I thought were pretty fun to see, pretty engaging. As a Kong fan, I love how much this movie spent dealing with his character specifically. There are sequences throughout the movie to where there's absolutely no dialogue whatsoever. It's just simply seeing him live in Hollow Earth, fighting creatures or surviving or interacting with other creatures. As I mentioned, one of the things I like more about Kong is that he's more expressive and shows a bit more emotion, and you get that with this movie as well. Sadly for Godzilla fans, Godzilla's in the movie for maybe half of the runtime that Kong is, and that's going to be a downside for a lot of people. Now, I think everything that we got with Godzilla was awesome, but you could argue there's not enough of it. And when we're talking about the main villain of the movie here, the Scar King, I think for the most part they did a decent job at fleshing him out, but also at the same time, some of his motives don't necessarily make a ton of sense, and the lore and the expansion of his character's backstory doesn't necessarily match up always with his skill set and his level of power that he displays in this movie. I mean, I couldn't knock it too much. It's like I said, character development, story building, that's not their main priority here. It's just we want to see big apes and monsters fight each other, and they delivered. There's a lot of other things I'd like to say about the movie, as well as some things they've gone out of the way to hide in the marketing. But because they've made it very apparent that they don't want to spoil those things, I'm not going to go into it in this video. But I will say, especially in the last 30 minutes of this movie, that's when it really starts to ramp up. That's when it really delivers on the action, the cheesiness, the major spectacle of it all, and it had me walking away with a massive smile on my face. While I think overall for the majority of the runtime it was pretty consistent, there are those moments where it dips down in quality or it takes a step back to focus more on those characters and giving us the exposition. But those last 30 minutes, it's just completely unleashed insanity, and everything that they gave us, I was just totally eating up. There are some reveals, there are surprises, and everything for the most part really worked for me. I'm not going to say that this is my favorite MonsterVerse movie. I'm not going to say I even like this movie more than Godzilla vs. Kong. I think it is probably overall a lot more messy than that movie, and that movie was messy, but there's no denying that it's just delivering on a fun theatrical experience. And by the end of the movie, the audience I watched it with were clapping. They absolutely loved everything that they got. This movie is in an odd position post 2023 when we got Godzilla -1, which is arguably the best Toho Godzilla King Kong movie that we have ever gotten. It received critical praise and all the fans loved it, including myself. I think not only visually is it very, very well done, but it also has a narrative that is rich and has plenty of depth and character development that actually makes sense, and there's characters that you care about with stakes that feel real. But it's obvious that that movie was trying to do a completely different thing than what this movie is. But because it's adapting the same property, they're obviously going to be thrown in the mix together. But I don't necessarily think that that is fair for this movie. Do I think that Godzilla X Kong is a better movie than Godzilla -1? No. Absolutely not. But when I'm in the mood for something like this delivers on that. I can turn my brain off and watch this movie and have a good time. If I want something more serious with more all-around better filmmaking at play, I'll turn on Godzilla -1. I think it's great that we have the option to choose between those types of movies. They don't have to go head-to-head against each other. They can exist in the same world. That's okay. I feel like this review was all over the place, but so is this movie. But all I have to say is I enjoyed myself. And if you've been liking what the MonsterVerse has done up to this point, and if you liked Godzilla vs. Kong, this is just going to be more for you to love. And I definitely think if you check it out, you're going to have a great time. So with all that being said, I'm going to have to give Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire a 7 out of 10.
Hey, That's pretty good.
Guys, as I said in the beginning of the video, make sure to comment down below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the movie. Also, tell me, are you Team Kong? Are you Team Godzilla? And if you don't want to say any of that, just drop an emoji down in the chat for engagement purposes. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe. Turn on that bell notification to get notified every time I post a new video. And until next time, I'll see y'all later. Peace out.